Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this hotly anticipated session. There are still a few seats, so when people come in, just find yourself a seat. So I have the pleasure of being your session host today. So shortly I will introduce our speakers. Just general keeping at the end of the session, we are planning to allow time for Q&A. So if you do have questions as they sort of come to you, we will be coming around. So once the session's done, raise your hand, I'll find you, give you the mic, you can ask your question. Or if you don't get a chance, then the guys have kindly said that they'll be able to answer questions throughout the rest of the conference. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Milind and Martin. Round of applause, please. Come on stage.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great JNUC so far. Probably very busy like us as well. My name is Milind Patel. I work in our product team, and this.
I'm Martin, Director of Software Engineering here at Jamf. I work closely with teams that build this new experience for you.
Perfect. So in terms of some of the agenda details today, initially we were going to start off with a little bit of a look back, and then we know why you're all here. You want to kind of see compliance benchmarks in action, so we'll just run straight into the demo. But after that, we'll spend a bit of time talking about, how we built this, some of the considerations that went in, as well as providing you a bit of detail around, how we've kind of gone about things in the back end and in terms of the architecture. Right at the very end, I'm sure many of you have questions about the future kind of direction of travel, what the current state is, where we're going with it. So we'll cover that as well. Actually, got ahead of ourselves. So my name is Milind Patel, as you know. This is Martin. And let's jump into it. So if you recall, last year at JNUC, Alan and Matt did an amazing presentation on the Jamf Compliance Editor called Compliance Made Even Easier. So Jamf Compliance Editor solved a lot of challenges that you as IT admins had within the sort of industry. Obviously, it built upon the macOS Security Compliance project, but provided a very friendly GUI for you to be able to leverage it where maybe you didn't want to use command line tools or it was just a bit sort of too finicky. And it also integrated well with Jamf Pro so that you could automatically have those artifacts being generated, but get those sent into your Jamf Pro instance so you can start to create the right policies and so on. But some challenges remained. Throughout the course of this year, we have been speaking to many of you who are in the audience today actually about what Jamf Compliance Editor does well, where some of the gaps are that you would like us to address. So number one, it was a standalone tool. Many of you did say, why do I have to download this standalone tool? Why can't it be just built into Jamf Pro? It does have a few sort of manual steps, and a lot of you just wanted automation in lieu of those manual steps, especially the steps that you don't really need to kind of think about too much and could be easily automated. You've also provided us with a lot of feedback on Jamf Protect and the compliance dashboarding we have within that. Many of you said, you love the reporting, you love the new compliance dashboard, all of the great detail that it does provide. Again, you asked us, why can't I get this in Jamf Pro instead? So at the end of the day, we are here to make your lives easier as IT admins. And many of our teams have been hard at work this year to give you exactly that. Solving your problems for you, taking the burden off all of the kind of manual actions and having to kind of think about what artifacts to create, how to orchestrate them, etc. Now, we've listened to your feedback. You've seen the preview in the keynote already. You know roughly sort of what to expect. So let's just jump into it and see what compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro and this session is all about.
Thank you. So exactly as Milind said, it was again your feedback that made us think about the next iteration. So we took the proven compliance editor workflows and rebuilt them as a Jamf Pro capability. So instead of just talking about what's new, I'd like to show you what we have done and give you a first-hand look at how it works. So let's dive into the demo and see it in action. So within your Jamf Pro console, you go into the new item in left-hand navigation, Compliance. You can select whether you want to go for CSI level 1 or 2, but we will be adding new benchmarks quite soon. Here, you can decide for the new name for your benchmark and decide whether you want to start with monitor-only mode or the enforcement straight away. Let's go for the enforcement. Clicking Next. Now, it's time to do the scoping. So let's select the macOS 15 groups. Going next. And here you can go through all the controls coming from the MSCP project. So let's decide that we want to tweak them a bit. So let's tweak the passport policy a bit. We want to keep it. OK, and now the airdrop. We feel it's useful to keep it enabled as well. Clicking next. We go to the review screen. So here you can thoroughly review all the assets that will be created in your Jamf Pro instance. You can go into the details and see what's about to be deployed. Let's click deploy, and that's it. So the benchmark was created. 3 easy steps. We can see what's the progress, the assets are being created in your instance, and we can actually verify it in a familiar locations. So let's go to the configuration profiles now. And you can see that all the configuration profiles for these benchmarks were created under the new category and prefixed with the benchmark name. Same applies for policies. That was the manual step previously with Compliance Editor. So 2 new policies for remediation and for auditing were created with the scripts in them. Now going back to the compliance benchmark, let's say we need to start over. So we can delete it and do the overhaul. Let's make sure that everything was cleaned up. Again, going to the configuration profiles, and it's gone. Same for policies. You can start over. So that's it for the demo. This was a quick look. You definitely can test this experience at the booth, but I would like to talk a bit about what's under the hood now. So the demo was just the beginning. Let's dissect it now and dig into the details to see how it actually works. Within Jamf Pro, you will see compliance seamlessly integrated into the left-hand navigation, exactly where you expect it to be. We designed compliance benchmarks with simplicity in mind, enabling you to get started really quickly. To achieve this, we took a fresh approach, rethinking how we build the features. And as Beth mentioned in the keynote, with the main goal of becoming a platform company and transforming into a platform product. So while compliance benchmarks, as you can see here, are a standalone feature separate from a Jamf Pro console, it plugs seamlessly into it. The integration, which is really close into the Jamf Pro, eliminates all the manual steps that were previously needed with Compliance Editor. It leverages existing Jamf Pro features through internal APIs and callbacks, and therefore ensures smooth and automated workflows. It builds such tight integration on top of admin SSO on OAuth standards, and also modular micro-frontends framework, which I will cover a bit later. Now, back to Millet.
Cool, thank you, Martin. So we've, the demo is pretty simple, right? We built this with simplicity in mind. So the demo was like super quick, a couple of minutes, and that's exactly how long it takes you to get started with everything. So let's dig into what it means to actually, start going about creating your sort of policy and actually deciding, what to implement. So when it comes to compliance benchmarks, right, selecting is very easy. You just go in and you select an available compliance benchmark template. But how do you go about choosing what to do? There's a number of different factors that might influence, what compliance means for you within your organization. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you yourself as an organization can only define what compliance means for you because you have a unique set of circumstances which dictate that. For example, you might be adhering to a specific regulatory environment. For example, you might be in scope of GDPR, HIPAA, or any other sort of regulations sort of out there that will influence your compliance strategy. You might also have some internal policies and priorities that you need to adhere to, coming from different teams, HR, compliance teams, InfoSec, IT, et cetera. So again, personal sort of requirements to you. You might have some industry-specific needs as well. So again, if you're working in financial sectors, you'll have some specific ways in which you need to kind of manage and deploy your devices, enable how certain controls work, and what your users are able to do and what they're not able to do. Finally, customer trust and expectations are big for us as Jamf, but also as you in your organizations, because depending on who your customers are, what your relationship is with them, and what your customers are expecting from you as a vendor or you as a collaborator or partner, that will also influence your compliance strategy as well and influence what you need to do. Now, the part about compliance that we're really focusing on today is compliance benchmarks, right? Adherence to specific standards and guidelines, which is kind of, part of the kind of easier piece of it, but it's a piece of a bigger sort of puzzle that we need to figure out. Now, that does combine a bunch of different factors that we've talked about, like the regulatory environment, the industry needs, et cetera. But it also helps us to provide broad coverage across a number of these different factors that we can address. Now, in terms of choosing what benchmark template we start with, I wanted to just, again, start with giving a big shout out to the macOS Security Compliance Project, because how we solve for compliance on Apple devices would be immensely more difficult if it wasn't for all of these authors who've committed a lot of effort in being able to define these controls and trying to align those with different standards you see out there, like CIS and NIST. So actually, I just wanted to take a quick moment, give a round of applause to all of these authors for the MSCP project. Now, through their efforts in helping us with compliance on macOS and now iOS as well, they've built this sort of singular project so we can start to align how we carry out compliance, how we align across different rules, different controls, and as a community get better at compliance. Now, it was the basis for Jamf Compliance Editor previously, and it continues to be the basis for us as we go forward with compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro. So let's dive into the workflow a little bit in terms of what you saw in the demo. Again, it's going to be super simple, but we'll go through each step and just go into a few more details around what you can do, maybe what considerations you should have as you go about this process. Now, accessing it, as you saw, was as easy as just logging into your Jamf Pro experience. You told us you wanted this built into Jamf Pro. We've done exactly that. So you log in, you see compliance on the left-hand side, and you just click on compliance. And it's going to be your very first end-to-end workflow, right? So you don't need to go into different places in Jamf Pro. You just log into the compliance space, and you can now start selecting your benchmark. The very first time you sign in and access this page, you'll see a list of available templates. Initially, it's going to be CIS 1 and 2, but we'll extend that to all of the MSCP benchmarks eventually. Now, if you are going in at a later stage, what you'll see by default is all of your existing templates that you've created as organizations, as opposed to the available ones. But you can easily toggle between your own created ones and the available benchmark templates. Now, let's talk about personalizing and scoping your benchmark. Again, super simple, but let's think about what we're doing here. The very first step is just to give it a simple name, right? For example, you could call it Acme Corp CIS1 controls for my engineering team, right? You have a description field, so you can give a few details, again, as a reminder to yourself in the future, or maybe a future team member on how you're going about creating this particular benchmark for your particular organization. For example, this could be who created this benchmark, when it was created, maybe how the policy kind of came about, who gave the approvals. If you're setting any sort of customizations or any exceptions for this particular benchmark, why is that, where are they coming from, et cetera. The very first time you do this, as Marty mentioned, you can either do kind of monitor only or monitor and enforce. So the first time you do this, maybe you just want to go with monitor only. If you want to come back and just quickly kind of toggle that to monitor and enforce, you can do that as well. But what we recommend is, click monitor only. We'll deploy the artifacts necessary for us to audit against that particular benchmark that you're choosing. And when you're ready, when you feel like your users are ready for you to actually start enforcing certain controls, you can start to do that, because at that point, you'll start impacting the end user experience. Scoping, again, super simple. We know that smart groups allow you to create powerful workflows in Jamf Pro already, so that's the basis for our scoping engine here as well. Here, you'll see a list of all of your available smart groups that you've already created in smart groups within Jamf Pro, and you can select any particular smart group that you want, whether it's for a group of devices, for a particular department like engineering, or all of your macOS 15 devices, or any other sort of version as well. Now, customizing might be an important step for many of you. Like I mentioned, we've spoken to many of you this year, and some of you said, you just want kind of the basic benchmark, but many of you said, customization is very important for you because maybe you just want to tailor the end user experience. Maybe as an organization, you have a slightly different risk tolerance. But on this particular page, what you can do is you can go through all of the different rules from the benchmark template that you've selected, and you're able to easily toggle on and off specific controls that you either kind of care about or you don't. And here, you'll also be able to define your organization-defined values. So for example, if you want the screensaver to kick in at an earlier stage, you can do that. Or for example, as Martin mentioned, maybe you want to allow your users to see password hints because it's just easier user experience and you don't want them to create many different support tickets. Or some of you might be managing your password policies in other places like Active Directory or your IDP. So maybe you don't want to get that enabled here because you're already managing that somewhere else and you want to get those disabled. Or for example, you have a particular business need and you need to enable AirDrop because that's what your employees or end users are using regularly. So you can disable that as well. Now, that's really kind of all you really have to do as an admin in terms of going in, thinking about what I'm going to be setting up and how I want to get this created. After that, the sort of magic happens. So to talk about how the kind of automatic generation of artifacts happens, I'll hand it back to Martin.
Thank you. So speaking to the magic, leverage the existing components but provide a streamlined workflow was like the core concept that we used when building this. First, it builds on top of what basically Jamf Compliance Editor started, but mainly we still wanted to enable admins to tweak the created assets. Hence, we are creating the assets directly from in Jamf Pro, and you can still find them in familiar locations. So you can review all the changes before they get applied, giving you full transparency and control over the process. If needed, you can dig even deeper, so you can see that what's happening inside every script or every configuration profile, or soon in every declaration. Voila, once deployed, all the assets are created in familiar locations, neatly organized, under the category which holds the name of the benchmark, and same for the assets that are prefixed with the benchmark name. So what is the perfect mix for building all of this in Jamf Pro instance? So as we said already, we are leveraging the MSCP project. That's the basis for all the data. This project ensures that your Jamf Pro and you benefit from trusted data sources, same data sources that Apple supports and other vendors are using, same data sources that JC was using and still is. People on our team are actively involved in contributing to the MSCP project. So while it is open source, we are fortunate enough to have a few people that are still with us here and contribute directly, like Alan Golbig. So thank you to Alan. We are able to build this experience, including the QA gate. So together with him, we designed an automated and manual quality control. So before we download any new update from MSCP project, we make sure that nothing breaks with your devices. Most importantly, every aspect has been built on your feedback, addressing the main pain points of compliance workflows. So that's the full mix in a nutshell. Let me now briefly summarize, especially for those who are not familiar with the MSCP project. So to achieve the auditing and compliance, we are using 4 key components in Jamf Pro. It is policies, extension attributes, smart groups, and categories. Apart from that, we are using also assets that are independent from Jamf Pro, but are needed for actual enforcement, such as shell scripts and configuration profiles. A lot of work has happened in the background, but the good news is that we are now enabled for the upcoming features. So all those future features that are coming are built on the new architecture that Matt mentioned, and I will try to describe it here. We mentioned today a Jamf capability. So what does it mean? Jamf capability is a platform thing that brings the cohesion and benefits of the platform. We are here talking about the Jamf Pro today, but Jamf School is hopefully coming soon, and also other products across our platform. You will not need to deal with any of these complexities, but under the hood, we invested into micro frontends and modular frameworks as microservices architecture to scale our new platform and especially our new product development. The new features then connect to existing products via internal APIs and callbacks, as I said. But we are also unable to build like feature-specific external APIs. but we will build them based on your feedback. So please continue to give us that precious feedback. To make all of this work, there are a few key prerequisites that need to be in place. So you probably already heard that this feature is for now coming for Jamf Cloud only. However, we are already thinking about the other deployments and other products like Jamf School. You will also need an identity provider. Here, we give you the flexibility to either use your own IDP configured via Jamf account or our own Jamf ID. With that, you are enabled to switch to the new OAuth single sign-on, which seamlessly connects all of our products. That's it. You are now ready to use compliance benchmarks as a Jamf capability. But not only that, also many more capabilities that are coming now. The best part is in this approach that we are independent of Jamf Pro releases. So we are enabled to release whenever it's needed or whenever you want to release the specific feature and keep the good cadence of releases. Now, back to Millet.
Cool. Thanks, Martin. So we talked a little bit about, how it works. We've talked about what happens sort of under the hood in terms of, how we made this available to you. Let's talk a little bit about the direction of travel. Many of you will already have questions. I'll do my best to answer those questions ahead of the proper sort of Q&A. So in terms of, what's happening next, we will continue to support the Jamf Compliance Editor because it is vital for many different customers with different sort of use cases. For example, Jamf Pro on-prem customers, you might be using some other MDMs like Jamf School at the moment, where you can't obviously access this in Jamf Pro, but you'll continue to be able to use Jamf Compliance Editor to be able to meet your use cases. Or as an organization, you might just want a high level of customizability. We do know that many of you do like to work directly with either kind of the MSCP project or with Jamf Compliance Editor, because it just allows you a bit more sort of creativity and a bit more sort of control. As I mentioned before, a lot of you provided us really good feedback on Jamf Protect's compliance dashboarding. But if you've noticed, the focus for us has really been in trying to figure out, how do we enable the best outcome that you want in the place that you need it? So as your feedback suggested, you wanted a lot of this built into Jamf Pro. So the direction of travel here with Jamf Protect and the compliance reporting is that we'll continue to merge that in so that in that compliance experience that you do see in Jamf Pro, you're able to do everything. You go in, you define your benchmarks, you audit against that particular benchmark through various reports and dashboards, and you're also able to get audit guides and such. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this. I've italicized considerations because don't hold me to this. These are just considerations we have on the roadmap. But we wanted to be able to share this with you because over the course of this week, we'd love your feedback in terms of you telling us what's important to you, what's not important to you, and what is absolutely critical for you to be able to adopt this. Now, to begin with, of course, as I mentioned, we have macOS 15 support, but as we're in private beta at the moment, we'll continue iterating on that, and we'll be supporting older macOS versions as well before we focus on bringing mobile support into the fold. We're starting with CIS 1 and 2 in this particular private beta instance, but as, again, we go into GA, we'll be supporting all of the MSCP benchmarks so that whether it's NIST 873, CMMC, you're able to get the compliance that you need through the very same tool. In terms of workflows, we'll have an audit guide coming, more focus on customization, both with organizationally defined values, but also many of you said that you want customizable benchmarks in total. So one, maybe that includes all of the different rules, all of the different controls, so that you can go in and start defining one particular benchmark that's unique to your organization. And overall, there is going to be a lot of focus on declarative device management and blueprints. You might have already seen demos of blueprints before. The whole idea here is as Apple makes more declarations available to us, and as we build support for those declarations into blueprints, we want to start shifting away from older MDM artifacts like configuration profiles and moving into modern MDM like declarations. What this also means, and building off of what Martin mentioned about us building this as a Jamf capability, is that we can find it much easier to take the very same workflow and bring it into Jamf School as well. But different admins amongst you in different sort of organizations, in different fields, have different needs, right? Sometimes you want a lot more customization, a deeper workflow, like in Jamf Pro. Sometimes you just want like a simple approach that allows you to just quickly deploy a particular benchmark to a device. So here, again, it's a consideration in terms of how we bring that to education customers amongst you. But we want to hear your feedback. We want to understand what would be the ideal workflow for you so that we can get it right. Now, as we start to kind of wrap up, a few FAQs and some follow-up. As Martin said, this is Jamf Pro Cloud only. But as Jamf Pro customers, you don't need any additional licensing. You just get it with all of your existing licensing of Jamf Pro Cloud. And all you really need is to just set up admin SSO to be able to start leveraging this great new capability. It's macOS 15, like I mentioned, to begin with, but we'll support other macOS versions as well. And after GA, of course, every single year, we'll continue to keep up with Apple and the MSCP project to give you updates to the new versions as well. And finally, is this all you need for compliance? I want to go back to kind of the beginning of the conversation. Compliance benchmarks is really kind of one piece of the puzzle. It allows you to gain a very good standard of compliance and a security posture for your devices so that we're limiting the kind of different attack vectors that potential kind of attackers can use to gain access to our systems. But at the end of the day, compliance is what it means for you within your particular organization. So having built this, we hope that it really helps accelerate some of your compliance efforts, but do think about what else compliance means for you outside of benchmarking and consider how you might be able to plug those gaps. Now, you might still have needs here outside of benchmarking, and again, we'd love to understand from you, what are you doing with compliance outside of benchmarking, like understanding which devices are vulnerable, maybe where devices are and what kind of other states they're in, maybe other risk, like endpoint security software is running on the device. All sort of questions and thoughts that we want to hear from you so that we can continue building not just compliance benchmarks, but a better compliance experience overall for you. Cool. Lastly, to follow up, we do have some brain dates booked. I think the first one is in about an hour and 15 minutes. So if you've not been before, it's on level 3 at Exhibit Hall 3. Like I mentioned, hour and 15 minutes, we'll do the first brain date. Tomorrow, we also have a secondary brain date at 9:20 a.m. But if anyone wants to kind of grab us in person, if you see us, or just go head down to the Jamf Expo booth where any of our colleagues will be happy to help you with the demo for compliance benchmarks and try to answer any of the questions that you have. Now, a lot of you have already expressed interest in joining the private beta, so we have been adding some of you already. Just continue to share kind of your thoughts, your wishes, and feedback, and we'll continue to do that. And with that, I think that's it. We already have a bunch of questions, but we super appreciate everyone's time here today. We know you cared about compliance for a long, long time, so we're also really appreciative of all of the teams that worked hard in order to bring this to you. So thank you for listening to the presentation. Cool, lots of questions.
We'll start over here.
Thank you for this and all the hard work. I think you've already answered this, but when will then be now? How soon can we have? When will this be available?
Right, good question. So we are in private beta now. In the coming months, we'll be hoping to go into open beta, but it kind of really depends, on kind of the feedback we get. Now, the reason we wanted to get this out sort of early to you is, we can start to kind of test it in different environments. If all goes well, I think early next year, we hope to go kind of fully GA with different sort of benchmarks, additional support, and so on.
I want to chime in and just ask a question. So we're in a really decentralized environment, and one of the things that we kind of have to do is provide services in kind of an a la carte kind of style. Is there, obviously you could only have one CIS level 1 or CIS level 2 benchmark applied. Can you go into the config profiles or the policies and mess with the scoping there to have exclusion groups and things like that? Or will that break the reporting side of?
That is a great question. Now, we've been careful with how we build this and very intentional because whilst many of you wanted simplicity, a lot of you also said that you love Jamf Pro, you love all of the things you're able to do with Jamf Pro, all of the customization. So what this does is, effectively it's an orchestration workflow which automates a lot of things and orchestrates a lot of things for you. But it's using the same, Jamf Pro mechanisms that you're already used to, like smart groups, policies, etc. So you can go in and update those. Ideally, what we want to do as we move forward is where you do have the need to, customize, exclude things, and just tweak things that you normally would within policies and other places to bring that in. Again, so it's an end-to-end workflow. But yes, you will, at the moment, you will be able to go in and, tweak with config profiles or policies.
Obviously, this whole thing will be huge for government and government contractors. And you mentioned Jamf School, but what about on-prem? Any plans there?
It is Jamf Pro Cloud only at the moment, but we have heard this quite a lot sort of this week. Now, I think there's various sort of different ways that we're engaging with on-prem customers to understand, what their kind of limitations are, what their specific requirements are. So I think outside of compliance benchmarks, it's a conversation that we need to sort of have and better understand sort of your needs. Within the scope of compliance benchmarks specifically, it is Jamf Pro Cloud, but we'll try to gain a better understanding of what we can do to continue solving these use cases for you as on-prem customers. But I think that's a broader problem and a broader sort of question than just compliance benchmarks.
Okay.
And building it in this manner, it has just made it easier and quicker for us to be able to bring this functionality to a lot of you that are using Jamf Pro Cloud. So it's not a case of, hey, we just don't want to support sort of on-prem, of course. It's, how can we provide the most value as quickly as possible? So that's why we've started with Jamf Pro Cloud.
For those of us who have already built compliance policies using the JCE, has there been any thought to sort of migration or takeover of what may already be existing in someone's instance to this?
Yeah, so as we were kind of doing research and working with many of you, we consider this. Ideally, we want to figure out how you're able to kind of transition. So what have you already gotten sort of created, and how can you kind of transition over? But as you saw, creating and deleting benchmarks is very easy. So if you've got everything kind of set at the moment, great. But when it comes to maybe the next macOS version or maybe an update to kind of the benchmark, what you can do is maybe start to think about what you've already created through a manual process and how you can maybe get that removed and quickly set up one for compliance benchmarks through the kind of automated workflow. Now, the good thing is there is a monitor-only mode. Right. So if you do want to transition, it's very easy for you to maybe just start with monitor-only, see how it would work with the new automated version. As you try to kind of clean up some of the old manual artifacts.
So there wouldn't be any sort of like migration tool to convert what you already have to this?
Not today, but I think that's an important area for us to consider as we onboard feedback through the beta process to understand how many of you have already created artifacts through a sort of more manual approach and how we can maybe make it easier for you to migrate.
Yeah, because the reporting parts of that you were talking about, I think there's a big win for a lot of us already because reporting is not easily accessible. You could do it, but having it all in one place with all this, I think, is very compelling to switch over. So a migration tool would be ideal for that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we're trying to work in a sort of obviously a very agile manner, so we wanted to get this value to you as sort of soon as possible. But there are many use cases like, when it comes to migrating things that we'll continue to adopt into the future and add as iterations.
Again, thank you so much for the work you guys have done on this. So in the scope, you can choose a smart group to direct the automation and the orchestration of this. In the old version, we also had to create smart groups to see like how many devices are uncompliant and things like that. Will those types of groups automatically be created with this iteration, or how is it handling that?
So with the scoping screen, you'll just see all of the smart groups that you already have within Jamf Pro, and you can select any of them to scope that particular benchmark to. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by the previous iteration. Oh, sorry, Adam.
In the last, the compliance editor as it is right now, part of the documentation tells you to create smart groups that basically look for flags are number of things that are compliant versus not compliant. Like if you run your benchmark against it and it says, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4 things are not compliant, then it tells it to advise you to then make it so that the script would then run on those machines.
Maybe I could answer this one. It wasn't so visible in the demo, but there is a reporting screen. So basically we take the reporting part separately. So you should see the basic report for compliant, non-compliant, and now unknown, which is in process basically in the dashboard. And we are thinking whether we should be creating smart groups automatically on your behalf or not. But the original purpose that when you were using smart groups for reporting is not actually needed now with the dashboard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just to clarify on the scoping again, so when you select a smart group to scope the benchmark to all of your devices, it just kind of works, and as Martin said, it takes care of like all of the manual stuff that you did before. The idea is that whether it's in the future kind of a macOS 15 device, macOS 14 device, etc., we can just take that burden off of you still. So you just have to focus on, okay, which users and which devices need to be compliant with which standard. And then we just try to figure out, okay, this is a macOS 15 device and it needs these artifacts being deployed to it. This is a macOS 14 device and it needs these controls with these artifacts. So trying to just kind of reduce the burden that you have in having to kind of think through the details and just offloading that into this kind of orchestration kind of system.
We already have Jamf Protect, which provides a detailed auditing and compliance reports, based on which device is compliant, which are those devices which is falling under the baseline category, based on the CI security baseline configurations. So I just wanted to understand, when we already have a detailed reporting for Jamf Protect, and I just heard that you also have that for Jamf Pro. So isn't this going to be a duplication? So I just want to understand, where is this overlap coming here?
Yeah, you're right. At the moment, it is a duplication, but going back to sort of the feedback that we've gathered from you that I mentioned right at the very beginning, you wanted an end-to-end workflow, and you wanted, many of you said, if not most of you said, I just want this in Jamf Pro so that it's easier, for me to use. So there is a bit of duplication today, but the idea is that we'll take that reporting from Jamf Protect and put it into this new Jamf Pro experience, so everything is available end-to-end for you. Now, like I said, compliance isn't just compliance benchmarking. Compliance means many different things, and there's various other tools and capabilities within Jamf Protect which can help you with compliance as well, like endpoint telemetry, the ability to gather a lot of data about that device and the device's state and what's happening on the device, which will help complete your compliance strategy, as well as things like advanced threat controls, making sure advanced threat controls like suspicious kind of behavior and activity isn't happening on the device, vulnerability management, which is often captured within the kind of compliance space. So making sure vulnerable applications or vulnerable operating systems aren't present on a device in order for it to be considered sort of compliant.
And would this also be available in the live sandbox environment, the Jamf Harbor demo environment right now? As a partner, we have access to that Jamf Pro sandbox environment. So right now, when I got to check, the feature is still not there. So just wanted to understand, is there any ETA? Because I'm more interested in the sandbox environment as a product manager, where I can showcase the same to the customers.
Yeah, good question. I actually don't have that answer for you at the moment. So we have got this enabled in all of our private beta instances, both sort of internally and with customers who've signed up. In terms of the partner sandbox, let me check in with the partner team, on that for you, and maybe we'll kind of publish an update to let you know exactly, when you'll get access to this.
Sure. I'm very much interested in this because even a customer whom we are working with, they are very much particular about this compliance security baselines. That's one of their critical requirements. So that's what I'm looking for, which I can showcase as a demo to my customers.
Yeah, cool. We didn't really touch upon it today because we really kind of focus on that individual organization compliance use case. But we also do want feedback from partners, MSPs, MSSPs, et cetera, in terms of where you're helping your end customers to be able to solve for compliance. Use cases like, hey, I have a standard template that I like to use across many different organizations that I help support. So again, whatever feedback you have as sort of partners and MSPs, MSSPs, do provide us with that so we can work with the relevant Jamf teams to also continue to provide more value.
I have a simple question in 12 parts. So how are you going to handle operating system upgrades? And just to give a little insight on that, at Jamf Nation 2022, they swore they were going to have the guidance out 2 weeks before the next operating system was supposed to be released, and obviously that didn't happen. And sort of the holy grail that we want as administrators is the ability to check a box that says, make all our machines CIS 1.0 compliant, and not have to worry about it. But of course, there's challenges in those operating system upgrades. And I know I saw that was on your roadmap. Have you thought through that some yet?
So just to clarify, is your question more about how the workflow of upgrading works, or how we can ensure support for new operating systems with new guidance as soon as it comes out?
Yeah, that's more the second part, but both apply.
Yeah. Can I speak to maybe the upgrade part?
Yeah. So now you saw that we support only macOS 15 and CIS level 1 and 2, which is basically the scope for private beta, but for public beta and even GA, we are going with full support of what's supported in the MSCP project. Guys are busy working on basically same-day support for the new versions. So even now for macOS 15, they're already supporting the first few declarations, for example. So we want to keep the pace with them, plus add this QA gate. That's it. So whatever is new in the MSCP project, we would immediately adopt it into this workflow. And it should be ready for your fleet, basically. A lot of flexibility is then up to you, how you create your smart groups, when you apply it, and so on.
Yeah. In terms of kind of the second part, of course, Martin mentioned our colleague Alan is heavily, involved in the project and has, committed a lot of effort in, continuing to help the community through the MSCP project. So we'll continue working with him, the MSCP authors, to also figure out, how can we provide better support for this open source project in order to make it easier, to have that guidance sort of earlier, or any other sort of issues that the community has.
So this is great product, but one thing I love about Jamf Compliance Editor is the create guidance. It creates that beautiful PDF, Excel, and that makes my security team very happy and off my back. Can this replicate that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we meant by the audit guide, as we had on kind of the roadmap considerations slide. When we mentioned the audit guide, which we'll be working on in the sort of beta phases before we go sort of fully GA, that's where you'll get the roughly kind of the same guidance that you get from Jamf Compliance Editor. But again, as a sort of product person, I have to say, we don't build things just for the sake of it, right? We don't build it for ourselves, we build it for you. So part of what I really hope we can do is get feedback from you in terms of what part of that guidance is helpful, what's really useful, what's maybe not as useful, what could be improved in that guidance. So when we build the guidance into the Jamf Pro capability, it's a bit more sort of ideal for you.
My question is that when you demoed that it created the config profiles and policy, are those config profile or policy themselves editable? If, let's say, I just want to change one setting or add something else to it, or is that going to mess up with the reporting that it sends back to the compliance portal, what it's supposed to show me there?
Yeah, good question. It shouldn't. That's going to be part of the beta testing, I guess. But it shouldn't, and yes, you can do it. But I think it was similar to your question that was asked earlier. And the thought is, we do want to bake this in as much of an end-to-end manner as we can within the compliance experience. So you don't necessarily have to go into configuration profiles, more clicks to dig into a whole different area and to maybe make tweaks. But you will be able to do that right now. And I guess depending on how many of you are making these kind of tweaks, customizations, we'll get a better understanding of how much we need to pull into the experience.
Maybe I would add, we were really thinking what is the next phase when it comes to tamper-proofing of those assets. So it would be really, again, really useful to get your feedback, whether we should rather do a tamper-proofing for maybe some set of admins with some permissions, or we should just visually distinguish those assets so make sure that admin is known.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, every single kind of piece of feedback that you log, we'll be going through it very extensively with our engineering teams. So the more of you say, hey, we need this thing, or this should be slightly different, the more focus we can give it.
We are at time, so we're going to respect the agenda. But obviously, if you still got questions, like Milan mentioned and Martin mentioned, there is the brain date. And yeah, there's a long walk back to the hall, so you can chew their ear while we walk back. So yeah, one last round of applause for the guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.